All right, welcome to another brand new segment we're trying out here on the Rock Show Critique channel. And who am I going to bring in today? Well, we're going to bring in none other than this guy right here. Man, I haven't
It
seen you in a decade.
hadn't been that long. We were just at a show very recently, I thought. What was it?
Yeah, well, we haven't done an actual video in a while though,
Oh, we haven't
so
done a video. Yeah, but we saw each other as human beings. Same. I think it was probably that last Todd Rundgren show, I guess, at the
yeah,
Riviera. But no, it had to be after
had
that.
to been
I don't
after
know.
that.
Whatever. We
Yeah.
see each other. I mean, for those in the audience that don't know, the only reason you're married is because I was the officiant. So you have to be nice to me, or I'll just annul your marriage whenever I want.
All right. So today's show, we got a special one here, like I was mentioning. We're going to take two bands, kind of pit them up against one another, and we're just going to say, hey, who's bigger? Who's better? We're going to do that right at the end after we make our valid points here. And we're going to start off with this first episode is a heavyweight battle between none other than two uh, Illinois bands out there in the Midwest. We got REO Speedwagon and Styx.
Mm.
So we're going to start off with REO Speedwagon. So we're going to each state, why we feel, the good points for REO, whatever we feel was a bad point or whatever, and then we'll move on to Styx. So if you want to start off with your REO Speedwagon, tell us like, what you think of them and all that good stuff. Go right ahead.
Yeah, well, REO Speedwagon has the distinction of being the very first band that I ever bought a scalped ticket for.
Wow.
Yes. So Styx will also have a concert distinction, but we'll get to that when we discuss Styx. But yeah, I remember they were on the I grew up in Rochester, New York, and Rochester was just one of those towns that really embraced REO Speedwagon. And they were coming to the Rochester War Memorial on the High Infidelity tour, which was
Mm.
was quite a big deal. And they sold out the first night rather quickly, and then they sold out they added a second night and sold that out. In fact, they had sold out the Rochester War Memorial for years. They sold out on the Tuna tour. They sold out on the Nine Lives tour.
Mm.
But there was just something different about High Infidelity. I mean, it's every band has that album. I mean, some bands have a bunch of albums that are really up there, but High Infidelity is just where it all kind of came together. And I think it was what, seventh or eighth record. I mean, it's not like it was their first one. They had the first four. You had the lead singer changes. You had
Hmm.
three different lead singers on four albums, and then Kevin Cronin, who's currently the only member from the High Infidelity era that's still technically active in the band, and maybe we'll touch on that a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, he's the only one that's still in it, but I mean, just the lineup. I mean, Alan Gratzer, such an underrated drummer. Uh, you have Neil Dowdy on keyboards. You got Bruce Hall on bass. He had just replaced recently, at least on the Tuna Fish album, Greg Philbin. And then you had who am I forgetting? Of course, none other than the greatest guy ever, Mr. Gary Richrath.
Hmm.
Probably, I have to say, in terms of onstage swagger, Richrath was a larger than life presence. There was just something about both the way he played, the way he stood. He was a rock star. And Kevin Cronin, too, during that era, still had a lot of enthusiasm. His voice was still in great shape. He was a he was a ringleader. He was the kind of guy who could really get the show going. I mean, when I think of REO Speedwagon, another thing from my youth is as a parlor trick. We would hang out at parties, and I had a friend that worked at a place that sold chicken wings, and he would get the chicken wings that didn't sell that day, and we get these garbage bags of chicken wings, sit around and eat them, and everyone would always make me do the whole version of 157 Riverside Avenue that was on A Decade of Rock and Roll. Nobody plays a guitar like Gary does. Just a really fun, but again, really just a great. I mean, when I think of the term arena rock. I mean,
Yeah.
these guys were the trailblazers. Nobody played a better arena show than REO Speedwagon back in the day. It was great, and they didn't need a whole bunch of props. It wasn't a huge spectacle. They really just let the music do the talking. So I mean, I don't know. I love them. The hits. What do we got? Time for Me to Fly. You got a great song. 157 Riverside Avenue. Like You Do is one of my favorite ones. The Flying Turkey Trot. Getting that chance to have Gary out there just playing his heart out. Keep on Loving You. Ballad, but still a great one. I'm not as much of a fan of Can't Fight This Feeling. I do sort of feel like they went a little too light on that one. But I understand why it was the hit that it was. I mean, it's a great song. You can't deny that. And of course, Keep the Fire Burning. Right.
Yeah.
So there you go. REO Speedwagon. Great band. I'll try to sum it up with they maneuvered through some early lineup changes to really carve out a great lineup, the quintessential lineup, which granted wasn't the original bass player, wasn't the original lead singer, but that 5-piece lineup that appeared on they would have started on Tuna Fish through which one before Gary leaves? I don't know, 3 or 4
Life as we
albums.
know it. Yeah.
Life as We Know It. And Greg Philbin was no slouch on bass either. I mean that live record is one of my favorite records. And I think what I like about the live double live record is that it's a lot of songs that maybe weren't as popular as some of the latter songs, but man, it was just such a great record. Golden Country on that, the version of Golden Country, Keep Pushing. I mean, just great stuff. Yeah. There you go. Did I fanboy enough for you, Joey?
Yeah, I think what you were getting at with that live album was it was before they really peaked as artists
Right.
too. So, you
Yes.
got all the early stuff up to 77. That's when live what you play for came out. And that actually is a platinum album. So they did get certified platinum for that live album, which is very cool. Because like you said, there's a lot of songs on there that you probably wouldn't hear during a typical REO Speedwagon set these days, which is, you were going to bring this up, you said, but obviously, from what we know as of right now, at this very moment, this is going to be their last hurrah here. That it's beginning in January 2025. It was announced that they will no longer be touring as REO Speedwagon.
And I think that the as REO Speedwagon is sort of a hint that it may wind up being, as some people speculate, like I don't know, you get these groups that just put whoever's name on it and call it that. It's I mean, Chasm Sultan's Utopia comes to the top of mind, but I know that there's other ones that, Jack White's Great White or whatever. I mean,
Jack Russell, yeah.
Jack Russell, sorry. I shouldn't say Jack White. Yeah, boy, wouldn't it be cool if Jack White was in Great White? But Creedon's going, it's Jack Russell, Jennings, Jesus. But you throw the name on it and then you could do what you want. John Kay's Steppenwolf. I mean, they bands the Yes featuring Anderson, Rabin, and Wakeman. So they speculate it's just going to be Kevin Cronin, the voice of REO Speedwagon, or something along those lines.
Yeah, yeah. So unfortunately, that's they're going out and probably not the way they were initially, where they really wanted to. But so if you want to see them before the end of this year is the last chance you're gonna see it. But like you said, you're only gonna see Kevin out of that band. There's nobody else in the band
Yeah.
anymore because Bruce Hall, for whatever reason, his doctor deemed himself healthy to go out on tour, but they're not letting him.
They don't
So
want they don't want him back on the road again. Go figure that out.
yeah, who would have thought it would ever come down to that?
Yeah.
Sadly
Right.
enough.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And
so Ari,
I've interviewed Bruce twice. Sorry to interrupt you, but
no, you're good.
have you ever interviewed Bruce or Kevin?
Bruce once, yes.
Okay, yeah. So Bruce, we love Bruce. I met Kevin. He was a bit standoffish to me.
Yeah,
But I
could
but
be.
I'm not gonna hold that against him. He was busy. He said, "Hey, it's time for me to fly."
Okay. All right. So my take on REO. This band's been around a long time. 15 studio albums in all right now, as far as that goes, not counting the Christmas album.
Crazy.
Um, 11 of those studio albums charted, so 11 out of the 15. And you got one diamond album, four platinum, three gold. And obviously the diamond album of High Infidelity is the one that, that they're living off of, and they can live off of that the rest of their lives, no doubt. That was a big album. And around that time in the early 80s, like you said, that's when arena rock really started coming into its own. So you hit that nail right on the head as them being one of the pioneers. I totally agree on that. Um, so they had three albums hit the top 10. And as far as songs go, you would mention there's a lot of songs. You mentioned a couple by name, which I dug a couple of those myself. They had two number ones, obviously the one that you mentioned, Can't Fight This Feeling, and of course, Keep On Loving You. 19 songs charted in all, 13 of them hit the top 40, four hit the top 10. So they've had a definitely a colorful career. From 1981 to 1985, they had put out three albums there in that area, but man, they had a lot of hits during that time frame, and then like you said, it sounded like the band just started going more softer and a little bit lighter, and that's where you end up, and that's why you get the unevenness of Life as We Know It. You know, the last album to feature Gary Richrath before he went off on his own solo career there. Uh, yeah, so I mean, REO, you know, it's weird how throughout the last 20 years, it always seemed like they had to be at least in an arena or as far as the shed tours, they always had to be packaged together with somebody. But they definitely were great when they went out on their own and just did like the small theater tour that would hold a couple thousand. They fared well. It's just weird how they just couldn't carry that over into the bigger venues without being on a bill with somebody like Foreigner or Styx or somebody like that. So, I guess over time, like once Gary left, it seemed like things were totally different. They brought in Brian Hitt on drums, they brought in Dave Amato on guitar, and who would have thought when they brought those guys back in about 1989 that they'd still be in the band up in 2024. That was a solid lineup from that time frame, 1989, all the way up until Neil Doughty retired last year. That's a long time to have a band together, especially the lineup changes they had in the early parts of the band. They didn't have a lot, but they definitely had some notable changes, like you said, with Bruce Hall coming in and when Alan Gratzer left and when Gary departed. But these guys managed to fill the shoes, and I thought they did them justice. I got to see these guys twice this past summer, and I thought they really did a great job. Even all things considered, I did see Kevin, one of the shows with Kevin after he had come down with some type of cold. He kind of lost his voice. So what they did was they cut the set down. The first time I saw them, it was just a headlining show on their own. The second time they were out with Train, and they cut the set down by like four songs just to help Kevin get through for so like 2 3 weeks after he came down with that cold. They had to chop the set down for a little bit, but then they picked it back up as he got better. But then, as we know from they never said exactly what he went in for, but he did have to end up having surgery at the tail end of that tour. But it sounded like it wasn't like not a major surgery, but at least that's not how they're making it out to be. But obviously, he plans that was when this all came into play. He's sitting there in the hospital bed thinking, I'm gonna do what I want to do now. Because you got to remember he's been with this band from the start, and he left initially in the beginning to go out on his own, and then he ended up getting drawn back into the band, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah.
You know. All right, so there's our take on that. Well, let's get into the other band we're pitting them up against, and then once we talk about Styx here, then we'll give our final analysis here. So what do you got with Styx there?
Oh, Styx. Well, very first concert ever. It'll be 45 years ago this year. I was 14 in 1979. I don't know. Oh, 13 maybe. Yeah, 13 years old. 13 years old, still in middle school. The show was a Thursday night. My parents actually let me go with a couple of friends and no parent to an arena rock show, Styx. I look back and I go, what the heck? Did they not love me? But yeah, that was my very first concert. I remember it being so loud, it just freaked me out. You know, if you weren't exposed to, because back in the arena rock days, before sound technology had advanced, the only way that you could really fill a hockey arena with sound was just to turn it up to some ungodly decibel level and to the point where you couldn't talk to the person next to you. Thank God we've advanced in terms of clarity and things like that. But Styx, I mean, wow, what a band. Major lineup change, kind of like REO. You had they were missing a piece. So REO has a first four albums. Styx has the first four albums that weren't commercially successful. In Styx's case, they were on a record label called Wooden Nickel, which was kind of an indie label. They had an accidental hit with Lady, which by the time Lady comes out, and back in those days, this would happen, you know, when bands are putting out albums, sometimes in less than a year, that a song from a previous record would hit, and that's what happened with Lady. I think by the time Lady came out, maybe Man of Miracles had already dropped, or whatever the case. So they eventually get onto a major label, A&M. Their fifth record, their fortunes start to turn, and then it's the sixth that they get Tommy Shaw. You know, kind of like with REO, you know, Kevin Cronin was the missing link. I mean, he was on REO 2. There are some songs that I think still kick around. Golden Country, Keep Pushing, or no, Keep Pushing's on the REO with the Naugahyde thing, but you know, Golden Country is on REO 2. Mm-hmm. But that REO 2, I think, is probably one of those records that became a hit after REO became famous. But yeah, you had this guy, Mike Murphy, who sang like Riding the Storm Out, things like that. Styx had a guy named John Surleski. I believe that's how you pronounce it. I've heard some people say Kuralewski, but I'm pretty confident in my naming John Surleski. And he leaves. Tommy Shaw comes in, and that the quintessential lineup for Styx is the one that is on the Grand Illusion. Now, the Grand Illusion is their first major record, comes out July 7th, 1977, 77. Very prog rock influenced, not necessarily beloved by critics or whatever, but still just an incredible record. I think it is still held up very well, still dominates their set list to this day, much like High Infidelity dominates REO's set list. They worked hard, built up a following, did some opening gigs, but they had a run of records, which I think it may be the thing that turns out to be the tipping point. You know, you go that multi-platinum records in a row. You had Grand Illusion, Pieces of Eight, Cornerstone, which the anniversary of Cornerstone's release was a couple days ago. My very first Styx album, which was Cornerstone, because I saw him on that tour. Mm-hmm. Followed by Paradise Theater, and then Kilroy. So all those five all wound up going platinum. Now Kilroy gets beat up a little bit, but you know, I don't know. Of the five, that's definitely the weakest, and you could sort of tell that they were running out of a little steam. Sort of faced the same challenges that REO faced, in the sense that they went from this arena rock band that a lot of people thought, you know, they were so, yeah, they're rocking, to a band that had released a couple of ballads. Babe is kind of Styx's Keep on Loving You, and then maybe Don't Let It End is their Can't Fight This Feeling. Although of the two, in Styx's case, Babe was the one that was the first one and by far more popular. Don't Let It End didn't quite reach the level of success. And like REO, they had they had a significant lineup change, which meant a change of the makeup of the band. Dennis DeYoung was gone. I mean, Tommy Shaw left first, and then Tommy Shaw comes back, then Dennis leaves, and you know, they're still around. But I would say that anybody that graduated high school or even attended high school from the period of, like, I don't know, 1977 through 1985, 86, probably was just a huge Styx fan because that's when they were really at the height of their popularity, and you knew them. And I think with Styx, the difference between REO to a certain degree, from what I remember of that time, REO was a little more dangerous, a little more rock and roll, a little more party type reputation. Styx was more, a little more on the refined, a little less, like dangerous in terms of the reputation of the guys. Styx wasn't a band that you were picturing coming into town and trashing hotel rooms and getting wasted. Whereas I think REO had a little bit of that reputation as the kind of the party guys, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so Styx, looking at their trajectory here, it looks pretty much even with REO in a
Yeah.
way. They made 16 studio albums, and it does include a couple they made within the last few years. In Interesting note about Styx, though, is all of their studio albums actually charted,
Mm,
which
wow.
is, not easy to do in this day and age always. Of those 16, five went platinum, four went gold. Um, they had five albums hit the top 10, including one that hit number one, and 23 charted songs. That means 23 songs made the Billboard 100. Obviously, they had Babe being the sole number one. 16 of those 23 hit the top 40, eight hit the top 10. So they actually doubled REO in top 10 hits, believe it or not. Something, a lot of people probably wouldn't even have known. And they also have a live album that went gold and a couple other albums that two of them went gold, one platinum, a couple greatest hits collections. But both bands did the same type of thing. They toured together for a long
Yeah.
time
A
too,
bunch
man.
of times. Yeah.
Yeah, well, multiple times. So they get along great. They actually released a live album together called Arch
Arch
Allies.
allies. Yeah.
Yep. So there's a lot of things here in common with these two bands. Both from Illinois, Chicago for Styx, Champaign, Illinois for REO. Both very popular in the Midwest. That's where they broke out, and that's where they're very, very popular still to this day. Um, so, having said that, I saw Styx. Unlike you, I didn't get to see Styx until 1991.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was too young when Kilroy was out, and they never toured until 91. And that's when they did the Edge of the Century. And by then, Tommy Shaw was in Damn Yankees, so I didn't get to see him because Glenn Burtnick was in the band at that time. But then the Return to Paradise is where I finally got to see, well, we didn't get to see John because he had passed away right around the time that tour starting up there, sadly enough. But for the most part, from that point on, I've seen Styx pretty much almost every year after that, in some capacity. And the one thing I like about Styx and Ariel both, they both aren't afraid to go back in their history. And they'll dig out some deep cuts every now and then, and they don't play this every tour. They change the set list up too. They very rarely would play like some bands nowadays. They're just ridiculous how they play the same set for like years and years on end. But these guys are always changing songs in, changing songs out, and this for me, it's pretty much neck and neck with these guys. But I'm gonna put the ball in your court first since you're the guest here. Unless you have anything else to add. So
No,
who do
no. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
the only other weird thing I was just sitting here thinking about it.
Hmm.
Maybe you can correct me because since it just popped into my head, the internet is the place where we can find the final answer. But I think they only have one. Each one only has one former member. Well, no, Styx has two. I was going to say Styx had two former members that have passed, John Panazzo and John Streletsky.
Yeah,
But as far as REO,
they've
the only
had a
one I know
couple
that,
too.
oh, that's right. They've had two
Philbin,
because Gary Richrath and Greg Philbin.
yeah, Philbin passed away in 2022, I believe it was.
So it's
So
only two apiece, right?
yeah, from what I understand, yeah, Philbin
Yeah.
died in 2022. Rich Wrath in 2015. Yeah, so that's another interesting coincidence.
Yeah,
But
it's interesting that they're, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting coincidence, but anyhow, I digress. Of the two, or you're saying you want me to rate which one I think
yeah, which
is the
band?
better, bigger, or
Well,
what's my criteria?
so we're gonna go which band was bigger,
Uh-huh.
and then you're gonna say which band was better. So you might have a different choice for each. It just depends on how your
Yeah.
take is there.
I would say REO was bigger at their peak.
Okay.
When they were at the peak of their popularity, the high infidelity area, their top was higher. Um, their ceiling, I guess, would be the term that you would use. So they had a higher ceiling than Styx did. Styx had a more consistent, extended period of popularity. I mean, both of them benefited from the fact that they weren't overnight successes. So their career, they had built a solid foundation. And it's a shame you don't see that as much with musicians anymore. Everybody's looking for that quick hit and the first record. I mean, we can't all be Boston and have our first record be our best record, or Van Halen. Some of these groups that just really hit it. But back in those days, record companies would nurture you, or bands in general would just spend time at their craft and hopefully get there. So I would say in terms of longevity of relevance, because bands eventually become irrelevant. I mean, your crowd grows older, they have kids, they leave you for a while, and then after the kids move out of the house, they're showing back up at the shows again, which is really, even if you look at the attendance trajectory of both bands, you'll see that was the case. So that's my bigger thing.
Mhm.
Better, I don't know, man. I feel like I have to give Styx the nod this, just in the sense that I don't want to say that Aria was one dimensional per se, but they had less dimensions than Styx. I mean, they had Bruce Hall that would sing an occasional song, really only one that wound up being a hit and
A
and and
mainstay.
and and
Yeah.
included in their set list. And don't get me wrong, that's a hell of a song.
Uh,
And it kind of surprised me that Bruce wasn't able to string together a couple of more that maybe stayed in the set list. And I think that, and maybe if he had, maybe this wouldn't even be a discussion as to whether he still stays in the band. I feel like an REO show without, back on the road again doesn't feel like an REO show. You almost feel like somebody else has got to sing it if Bruce is not there to sing it. And he was such an important connection to the past. But with Styx, you had three unique lead singers. You got JY, you got Tommy, you got Dennis, and there's others too. I mean, Glenn Burtnick. Let's
yeah.
put him into the discussion. Glenn's material is an outlier. It's very unique in terms of the Styx catalog, but it's still there. John Streleski sang a couple of songs too.
Yep.
So, um, and there was a spirit of experimentation in Styx, which I thought was pretty cool. I mean, they could be proggy, but they still maintained sort of a unique American feel to them, and then that's important with both these bands. Yes is a progressive rock band, but they're English, even though most of their members are from America now. But their history is rooted in English progressive rock, whereas Styx was able to still maintain a unique kind of Midwest character, but yet still experiment. They could be a rock band, they could be a pop band, they could be a ballad band. They even incorporated maybe elements of new wave when Too Much Time on My Hands came out. So, and I think that I don't know, even though it took them a while to release these last two records, they still did it. And REO to me just seems like they just they have been a little bit too mired in their past, and they're kind of going out with a fizzle. And I'm not saying that Styx will necessarily go out with a bang, but I think Styx is still playing at a higher level than REO. And you spoke about Kevin Cronin's voice. You know why Kevin Cronin's voice is such an issue? He's the only guy singing.
Yeah.
You don't have I'm a big Todd Rundgren fan, as anybody who knows me will tell you. And Todd Rundgren will suffer that same thing if he's on a long tour or whatever. when he was in the group Utopia, they had 4 lead singers, and some of the material that came out during that era is incredible because he wasn't singing all night, and it gave him an opportunity for his voice to rest, and it just was an overall better show. And maybe, I mean, again, maybe going back to the Bruce Hall departure of REO, maybe that's an important thing. It may have only been one song, but at least it gave Kevin at some point during the show an opportunity to kind of recover
Yeah.
his vocal cords, especially as he gets older and whatnot. So yeah, that's my take. And I said, I mean, just I feel like Styx just will they'll dig out the deep cuts. I mean, REO did a high infidelity album show beginning to end, but I mean, is there really any other album that they would do that for? I mean, Styx did it for Grand Illusion to Pieces of Eight because they just have more albums that are, to me, just classic records. And yeah, REO has a great collection of songs. Don't get me wrong,
Right, right.
but Styx, man, Styx has got just a handful of albums that you're gonna play for side one. You're gonna flip that baby over and listen through side two because they are just they epitomize what was great about album oriented rock. So that's what I got.
All right. Yeah, so I totally agree. I agree with that first part where you said at the peak, REO Speedwagon, um, they were the bigger band at the peak. Um, looking back as a whole, yeah, that time frame, was amazing for them, 81, even can't, Tuna Fish album, that's where they started to find their identity. And then they rolled into finally, out of nowhere, they come right up with this high infidelity, like right out of the blue, kind of the way this album hit. It came fast and heavy and it hit right out of the gate there. As far as Styx is concerned, I think they just never reached that peak that quickly. They were more of a steady diet there because their 4 albums in a row there all went triple platinum. REO never really hit like that. They just had the one big album. You take away High Infidelity, you look at REO's sales, they have maybe 2 platinum albums and 2 gold. So I mean, the High Infidelity, that's how big of an album that was for them, and that just shows you. And like you said, I agree that they were just the bigger band at their peak. So I'm going to agree with you on the bigger, and the better I'm going to agree as well. I think Styx over the course of time, even with the changing of members, I thought they've done a great job. They really focus on their craft, like you said. And they brought in Lawrence Gowan against what many people didn't like the move, but to get back out on the road at that point in time because they had a new album out, it kind of left them no choice, unfortunately. I mean, people have been going round and round about that whole situation, but I understand they had a new album come out. They felt if they didn't get out there and started to tour for it, that it probably wasn't going to sell that much. And not that it really did anyways. That was the Brave New World that came out in 99. But yeah, I think overall, though, Styx had the more stable because you had those 4 albums right in a row. Then you followed it up with a fifth album that went platinum in Kilroy. Regardless, like you said, of what people say about that album, it still went platinum. You hit number 3 with Mr. Roboto. And that's another thing too. Styx wasn't, except for one song, they weren't afraid to go back and dig up some of these songs, which people always thought that Roboto was what broke up the band, but obviously it never was the real reason why they broke up because they added it back in the set list. And where is it today? First encore. They've been doing this now for like 8 years, where it's in the first encore and they play it night after night, so they haven't dropped it yet, so it just goes to show you, they're not afraid. It's only one song that they haven't really dug up since Mr. DeYoung left, and that is Babe, um, which many people say that that's kind of where Styx started running into some of the problems with the band. They
Which
didn't,
I disagree.
well, it's a great song, no doubt about
Yeah,
it.
it's revisionist history, though. They go
Yeah.
back and look at it. I mean, it's revisionist history. It's if Babe was the problem, then there is no Paradise Theater. Paradise Theater is an incredible record. And it happened after Cornerstone. And Cornerstone is an incredible record too.
Yeah.
Because, Tommy's contributions on Cornerstone are some of my favorite songs. Lights, Boat on the
Going on the
River.
river. Yep.
I mean, it's a great record. I mean, it's kind of a shame. I wonder how things would have been in terms of the way they look back, as if the lead single on that record had either been Lights or Boat on the River. Was Babe the lead single?
To find out here. I believe
I
it
mean, it's
was.
it's just I don't know. It's a
Yeah,
song, and
it was.
yeah, but I mean, it didn't define the band. They were still playing arena rock shows. It was just about everybody has a ballad. Guns N' Roses has a ballad. Uh, Poison had a ballad. Everybody has ballads. REO had ballads. I don't understand why they look back on Babe with such disdain, like, oh, this was a sappy song. I think the problem is that Babe became a hit, and they were afraid that they were just going to continue to churn out other
Stuff
Babes,
like
which
that.
I'm sure that's
Yeah.
isn't that what happened with REO? Because
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
fight this feeling is can't fight this feeling to me is keep on loving you light is what it is.
yeah.
Just like to me, don't let it end is is a softer version um of Babe.
Eh,
Although first time, which is on Cornerstone, I
yeah.
believe as well,
First time, yep.
is a very, it's a ballad. I get it, but you know what? When you get three different writers
Hmm.
contributing different stuff, that's the appeal of the band. I
Yeah.
mean, you can have a song like Eddie, which is a rocker, and then you have a ballad like First Time, and then you have this folky Boat on the River. That's what makes a great album. I don't need to hear, eight versions of the same song reshuffled to cover up one hit. And that's what a lot of bands did in that era.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that one in particular because there was five singles released from Cornerstone.
Yeah.
The first one was Babe.
Great song,
They followed it up with Why Me, which is another great song.
which they should have followed it up with Boat on the River, but
Yeah, Boat on the River was third, but it never charted, believe it or not.
I think it charted
And
overseas. I don't
yeah,
think
it
it
did.
charted. Yeah.
Yeah, it did chart overseas, Germany, Netherlands. So and those are the only two countries where it shows some kind of a chart position. And then the fourth single, oddly enough, was Borrowed Time. It actually hit number 64 on the U.S. charts.
Yeah.
And then Lights got released. I think they would have done better having Lights be the second single because that song is just phenomenal.
Oh, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
do you think First Time wasn't a single because it was so close in the vein of Babe? Do you think maybe that's why the record company shied away from it?
My understanding is that Tommy and JY nixed it. Like they just didn't want it. I don't have a hard time believing that. That makes sense. I mean, for the very reason you said, like we've already got a ballad. I don't want two ballads as singles because then we become a ballad band. I
So you
think
never got it. Yeah.
Journey suffered a little bit of that, maybe, but Journey worked around it. I mean, Journey had some ballads that were hits, but they still had some great rock tracks in addition to it. But I think there was somewhat of an expectation that I don't know, Journey's another one, very interesting career in terms of soft rock songs and rock songs.
Yeah.
But and I don't think First Time was nearly as strong as Babe.
No, I wouldn't have released it before Babe, but I was
Yeah.
just, I would think maybe if they released it as a third or fourth single, maybe it would have gotten them in the top 40 again. Who knows? It's
If it was me and I was Styx's producer at the time, I would have held that song back and put it on the next record. Now, mind you, not knowing what was coming next, because that would not fit
right.
on Paradise Theater at all.
No.
But I don't think I'd put it on the record. I think it's just too close in form and substance to Babe. I would have been like, yeah, you got to pick one or the other, Dennis. We're not putting both on here. But maybe that's all they had in terms of material.
Yeah. And it's just interesting too that the Tommy Shaw kind of did his best impersonation of one of those ballads, but it wasn't really a ballad on the Paradise Theater with She Cares. So that's the way he wanted songs to be done, the way he came up with She Cares, as opposed to playing softer, Babe, I'm leaving. You know what I mean? So I think
Well,
everybody had a different.
Babe is a piano based song.
Yeah,
Babe
I
is a
think every
piano based song, and Tommy's a guitar player. Tommy can play a folk ballad.
yeah,
He just didn't have a taste for that stuff.
different vision. Yep,
Yeah, for sure.
definitely, definitely.
Where are you going now? I mean, even some of the stuff that was Damn Yankees stuff. I mean, it was pretty soft rock. You know, I don't know. It irritates me that even they still kick that stuff around like, oh, Babe was the beginning of the end for Styx. The beginning of the end for Styx was that they were too popular for too long. The record company was pushing them out on the road too much.
Yeah.
They needed to take a break. REO suffered from, I think, the same fate in that, they got High Infidelity, and rather than just after all those years and the changes in the lineups and finally achieving that success, they should have rid they should have just sat on High Infidelity for three years before they put out their next record, and maybe taken just a whole year off to just chill and recharge. Because I think Good Trouble suffers from the fact that they wanted it too soon after High Infidelity, because that's how they did things back then. That's how they ruined artists. That's why Michael Jackson never put out albums every year, because he knew better.
Yeah, so High Infidelity came out obviously in 80, near the tail end, November of 1980. And then you're right, Good Trouble got pushed out the door so quick. That was in June of 82. And they were still out on the road touring for it. It's amazing. They recorded it between February and May of 82. The interesting thing is that Kevin will admit today that he had writer's block on it. Bruce even talked about it during my interview because I
Yeah.
asked him, why they don't do much off the album. He goes, well, Kevin's not really fond of it. And it's weird because Keep the Fire Burning was a great way to kick that album off, no doubt. And I don't know if you ever heard them. They actually added it back in the set about 2 years ago, but they kind of gave it a different flavor. I didn't really like the way they did it,
Yeah.
um, compared to the original. You can always search for it on YouTube. But yeah, that you're right. That album was definitely rushed out. Kevin had writer's block, all kinds of problems, and they wouldn't even play hardly anything off of it in the concert. Even though, like on the next album, they came out with Wheels Are Turning in '84. They finally took a little bit of a break, and by
Mm-hmm.
then, I don't think they played anything off of Good Trouble on that tour at all. They came out with a home video, and they were just playing pretty much High Infidelity and stuff off of Wheels Are Turning.
Yeah, I saw the Good Trouble tour, and they did a healthy chunk of it, but
Hmm.
I felt like the songs from the record didn't fit. They didn't fit the set either. They just didn't have the same, whatever you want to call it, that they did. But that, I don't know, I felt they were kind of an every other album kind of band anyway. You had in terms of, you had Tuna Fish that was really huge, and then Nine Lives, which was a little bit of a lesser, even though I think Nine Lives is one of their best albums. And then High Fidelity, big hit, and then Good Trouble, which is a little lower. And then
Yeah,
Wheels Are Turning. It's so, I don't know, but that's why, again, I think you do these bands a disservice having them just puke stuff out. And Dennis had said when I interviewed him, with regard to Kilroy,
hmm
is that it, Tommy and JY just didn't bring anything to the table, because they just didn't have anything, because it was probably too soon after Paradise Theater to have anything. So Dennis had stuff. I mean, Pink Floyd, same thing. The Final Cut, it's all Roger Waters.
yeah,
By that point, you know, David Gilmour's a minor contributor because he just didn't have any material. I mean, it said if these bands take 2 or 3 years off, and then maybe they don't want to kill each other by the time they get back together,
that
because they're
that's
just not
big right
sick of
there.
being in the same room, you
Hmm.
know. Um, yeah. So I don't know. It is interesting how they had similar things, and
Yeah.
again, now you got the internal band politics of REO, which is sad. Journey's going through that. I mean, now a lot of these bands from that era, it's all about the business and the money
Yeah.
and the business arrangements, and it's just a shame.
It's a shame, yeah, that it came all down to that. But
Yeah.
at least Styx is still out there doing what they can. You know, I mean, you got to give them credit. How many shows they do a year? Almost 100
Yeah.
on the average, at least. I mean, at their age, to be still doing that many shows a year, it's just simply amazing. All right,
Yeah.
so To recap real quick, we both got REO as the bigger band during their heyday, and we both got Styx as the overall better band. And that's this episode's bigger, who's better.
And
And
I will close. And I'll close with this because I know you're going to agree with me. They
okay,
both belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
oh yeah, that's it's a travesty. But I'm thinking Foreigner going in this year is going to open some doors.
Hope so.
So that's what we're hoping for here. And yeah, put your take in the comments, whatever you want to say. We are definitely want to see what everybody else thinks, see if we're off our rockers or if everything we said makes sense or give us your opinion. That's what it's all about here at the Rock Show Critique channel. We just want to start conversations and give our take. And we're not sugarcoating things, as you can tell. I mean, me and Thom are passionate when we talk about these bands. There's no doubt about that.
Passionate.
Passionate.
Hi, Davey Creighton. This will prove whether you made it to the end of the video or not.
All right. All right. So stay tuned for more episodes coming. Don't forget to check out Thom on his channel, Tuning In with Thom. And
THOM, Thom Jennings.
very good. Signing off. Have a great day.